In this video, I am going to show you how you can use a story pole to help you center all of the exterior fixtures, including lights. However, this one here isn't centered, could have been moved up or down, and exterior vents, which these here look like they're in a good spot. However, the dryer vent isn't. It could have been moved up or lowered, and it might not have been able to be lowered. And if you think about it, this one here is not in that bad of a spot. You grow some plants here to block the dryer vent, right? That happens too. Seen that plenty of times. So again, not a good thing to do for those of you wondering. Let's keep the dryer vents open. And then we have an electrical outlet that could have just been moved up an inch maybe, and it would have looked better. And the doorbell's right on the money, but often I remember drilling the hole myself when I'd be installing siding. You would drill the hole for the doorbell, and then someone would come in and install it later. And then of course this light right here could have been moved down a little bit or up to be centered in the siding. Now, does this look bad? Is this a big problem? I'm going to leave that up to you. If you don't mind something like this, then you can stop watching the video right now, because you won't need to use the story pole. And this is our last picture. Again, another outlet. The dryer vent here looks like it's in a good spot, and then we have a water heater pressure relief line that looks like it's in a good spot. And as far as clean outs go, they're probably going to look better centered, but probably not going to be that big of a deal if they aren't. This isn't going to be the same thing as a light fixture or a plug. So again, this would be personal preference. However, a plug where you need to cut the siding around the outlet cover or have it hanging over the piece of siding, which is what we would have saw in the previous pictures, obviously isn't going to be a good thing. Going to be better to have it on a flat surface. Now let's go ahead and pan out. Again, just to give you an idea of what we're looking at here when we're centering things. And now let's go ahead and zoom in on the light here, where we can see that the bottom half of the light fixture is hanging down below the siding in the same way the electrical outlet could. And for those of you worried about insects, then this is obviously going to provide you with a little more protection than an exposed section of the light fixture like we would have down here. Plenty of little insects could crawl in here. Not as many going to be able to come in here. So again, it's not just going to be about aesthetics. It might also have something to do with the location of the windows and whether or not you're going to end up with small pieces of siding like this at the bottom or the top, which of course could be eliminated if you relocate the windows or increase or reduce the size of your trim. So we're not just looking at a bunch of fixtures, we're looking at windows, doors, vents, and even pop-outs. Anything that could create some type of a problem with the way the building looks or the way something like a light fixture or an electrical outlet can actually be sealed. Now let's take a look at how to make a story pole and how it actually works with the siding. So zoom in here and you can see here where the lap siding is spaced 7 inches apart. So each one of these lines would be 7 inches apart starting from the bottom. And when I say 7 inches apart, that would mean from the back or the front, but not both if you have lap siding that's at an angle, which most of the time you are going to have lap siding that's going to be at an angle. Now in this example, I notched over the framing plate so that I could set the story pole on top of it, but this might not work for you all the time because you're going to have blocks in the way, braces, plumbing, electrical, stuff like that in some cases. Let's take a look at how the bottom, I like to have the bottom of it line up with the bottom of the siding. And of course, I've chose mine to be lined up with the back and not the front, but you can do either one. So you can see here where the back of the siding lines up with the back of the siding below it. But you could have it line up with the front to the front. Either way will work. Take a look at how it ends at the top. Now let's take a look at our story pole. Each one of these segments is 7 inches apart. Yours might be different depending upon the type of siding you're going to be using. Now here's what I usually do with my story pole. I usually lay it out and then mark where everything is going to go in the center. All of the outlets, clean outs, and lights. And I use my measuring tape and not the story pole. I don't set the story pole on top of the framing plate all the time. However, I will lay the story pole out and carry it with me as I go around marking for all of the electrical, plumbing, and anything else that's going to be popping out that I'm concerned with. So here I have 8 1/4 from the bottom of our story pole. but it's going to sit on top of the framing plate to the center of the clean out. And I have 15 1/4 to the center of the plugs. And again, I'm just going to use my tape measure. Same thing with the light. I have a light. The L symbols the light. You can actually write light out if you need to. And they will be located 71 1/4 inches to the center. So hopefully that makes sense, but you can do it either way. You can use the story pole or the tape measure to find the location of your electrical boxes. Now, something else I need to point out here, and this might not be a problem for everyone, but I got to point it out, and that is to focus on the measurements on the story pole if it was laid out correctly, and not the siding, unless you understand what you're doing. So I've gotten confused in the past by working my way up without a story pole and then installing the electrical outlets as needed. And if that's the case, you're not using a story pole, you're going to need to come down an inch, whatever it's lapping over, and focus on that. Otherwise, you could end up with an electrical outlet that might not be in the center. Now, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at how we would use the story pole. And as I mentioned, you can use the measuring tape by measuring this and then transferring those measurements over to the wall framing studs, or you can use the story pole. Just simply put it next to one of the wall framing studs and mark accordingly. Just simply transfer the marks over. And again, the box isn't going to be here. You're simply going to set the stud next to the other stud and transfer the marks for the siding, or transfer the marks for the center location of the light fixture box. So not too difficult. And of course, you would do the same thing for the electrical outlets by either marking for the siding or the center of the location of the box. Pan back out. Again, story pole sitting on top of the framing plates without any blocks in the way. So again, if you have blocks or anything in the way, you're not going to be able to set the story pole on top of the framing plate, or at least you might not be able to do it as easy. And that's where the tape measure would come in nice and handy. And for those of you wondering why I have the siding in there when it's not going to be installed, it's just simply a reference for you to get an idea of what we're doing and how the electrical boxes can be placed before the siding has been installed. And of course, here's another thing that you might not be thinking about, and that's whether or not you should angle your electrical boxes or light fixture boxes to match up with the face of the lap siding. So as we can see here, we have a little bit of a larger gap as it works its way up at an angle to the top here. So again, something else to think about when installing your electrical fixture boxes. Now let's go ahead and take a look at how this might work for a raised foundation, how the story pole might be used in the same way to where you can sit it on top of the framing plate. However, the notch will need to be a little longer. So again, same principles. Bottom is going to line up with the bottom here. Now here's a little surprise in the video for those of you who are still wide awake and watching. If you notice, we have changed the story pole. It is notched over the bottom trim and now has a block attached to the story pole that would allow it to sit on top of the framing plate and then miss all of the blocks or plumbing, electrical, whatever we have in the walls that might be in the way. So again, not too difficult of a concept to grasp. You can come up with your own ideas, get as creative as you want to for your story pole and how it's going to sit on top of the framing plate, or even if it's going to sit on top of the framing plate, you can use something else as a guideline. And in some cases, we've had people go around with building levels or transits, and they would mark off a line about 4 foot from the top of the building foundation all the way around the building. And this would be the guideline that we would use for our story poles, or to make the necessary measurements needed to locate everything that's going to be popping out of the siding, like our plumbing clean out. And hopefully by now I don't need to go over how we're going to be centering the plumbing clean out, but am providing you with an example of it and how the siding might be installed around it, and of course look as nice as possible. So that is it for the video. And for those of you who know the drill, hit the thumbs up button if you like the video, and if you have any comments, leave them in the comment area, and any questions, leave them in the comment area or email them to me and I will answer them as soon as possible.